Hello, students. This week we are officially moving into the second half of our textbook. We call it Part 2. And in Part 1, we learned all sorts of concepts about the quality of light and about the quantity of light. In the second half of the textbook, we move on to using all of those concepts that we just learned and figuring out how to apply them to an actual lighting project. The first chapter here that we're going to cover today is chapter 9 on the lighting design process. So we're going to study the project planning process today. And we're going to start with the programming phase and schematic design and end up with design development. Later, next week, our next chapter covers the second half of the project planning process through the end of the project. So let's take a step back for a second and instead of focusing on specifically lighting design projects, let's talk about interior design projects in general and also architectural projects. So one way to look at the interior design project process is to divide it into a 4-stage project. And so we see right here we've got stage 1, 2, 3, and 4. And stage 1 is program, design, and analysis and ends with a proposal. Stage 2 does a survey. You start your creativity and your concept, including space planning and design, and ends with a client approval. In stage 3, we produce the contract documents. These are the construction drawings, usually, and specifications. And that stage ends when we get the permits. And finally, stage 4 is project management. This is while the project is being built. You might be more familiar with the AIA, American Institute of Architects, project phase names. They divide it roughly in the same manner, but they are called schematic design, design development, construction documents, and construction administration. So your text is specific to the lighting design process in particular, but it has roughly the same project process as the other larger design fields. So we start with up here project planning and programming. We move into schematic design, design development, contract documentation. Remember, those are the contract documents are the construction documents. Contract administration, that's where the project is being built and we're reviewing it as it's being built. And finally, your textbook throws this in, but this is a really good reminder that after the project is done, you need to take a look back and evaluate your design and evaluate your business processes and see where you can improve. And I think that's why your text shows this as a circular process. I was a little surprised when I saw this because I tend to think of it as each project as a linear process with a start, a middle, and an end. And you're done and you walk off to the next project. But I think what your textbook is trying to intimate here with the circular process is that everything that you learn from the last project is then applied to your next project. And so it is a circular or a spiral path through your design. So in chapter 9 here this week, we're going to cover the first half of these project processes, planning and programming. Today in this video, schematic design and design development. I'm going to split off to the next video. So the first step I want to talk about is project planning. The purpose of this phase is to develop a profile of the project and determine the resources that you're going to need to achieve whatever objectives you just developed. So first, and a big piece of this is defining the project objectives. You need to get a preliminary understanding of what the owner needs, what the end users need, and some of the elements of the property. Um, and that includes some of the project parameters, the property location, and whether your project involves new, existing construction, whether it's speculative or not. These are some really basic project parameters, all right? And we're talking in this phase before you even sign the contract or before you even prepare a contract for this project. And finally, project planning also includes some early site visits, and the designer should do a preliminary walkthrough with the client. Next comes the programming phase. The purpose of this phase is to gather a lot of information about the project. All right, we got some basic data in the previous phase, but now we're going to just gather data like crazy. All right. And we're going to do some preliminary analysis on that information. We'll do more in the next phase. In this programming phase, you're going to set some priorities, some design priorities, and specific to lighting design, set some lighting criteria. So when we're gathering data, you want to find out about the end user of your space. You need to find out all about the physical characteristics of the space. You need to do some research and find out any applicable codes and regulations. And if your project is interested in LEED certification, now's the time to do some basic research into those certification requirements. See if that's even a possibility. One of the primary tools that you use in program is the interview and or survey of your clients and your end users. And you can go and personally observe them in the space, or you can send them surveys, or you can interview selected users. All of these are different tools for gathering information. And so what we're interested in is who's going to use the space and what are they going to do in that space. We want to know how they perceive the existing lighting, if it's a remodel, and are there any changes that they are planning on in the layout? One of powerful tool for programming is personal field observations. So you go out to the space and observe what's happening. And your textbook recommends that you do this multiple times at different times of day, different times of week, to observe different patterns of use. So here are a couple of the planning and programming activities that your textbook has illustrated for us. Let's start over here on the left. And this one is using a computer model of an existing building to study the path of the sun and the shadows of the surrounding buildings in order to study how daylight hits their site. In this one right here, figure 9.4, it's for the same project. And what they're doing is creating some physical mock-ups of the space and then using sensor readings to collect data. And finally, on the right-hand side here is, again, a computer simulation here of a specific workspace or work area, and you can see the different times of day. So this is throughout the day from morning, I think, all the way through evening, and showing the change of light conditions throughout the day. Your textbook also provides these sample client questionnaires and responses. And I highly recommend you look through these closely. I thought they were a very good tool, very in-depth, to kind of spark some of those initial conversations and interviews. Um, I don't know too many projects where you would sit down with multiple people and go through this very long questionnaire, but just the fact of reading through them as yourself as a designer, you can flag the important information for a specific project and really hone in on that. And one thing I really want you to take a look at is this one right here, Table 9.4, and take a look at the kinds of questions that it's asking. The people in the space, who uses this space, the activities in this space, the role of lighting in conducting those activities. What do you need the lighting for? Um, And if you think that this looks like kind of the analysis of the Blue Bottle Cafe that we performed, I think you'd be right. Maybe a slightly different focus to it, but this is the same kind of lighting analysis that we've been talking about since the beginning of the semester. In the programming phase, you are gathering a lot of data. And a very, very important piece of that data is the physical assessment of your site. Again, assuming that this is an existing remodel project. And one thing that you really need to do is take an inventory of everything that's there. This includes the existing luminaires, lamps, controls, outlets, daylighting. We saw some examples of how they were investigating the daylighting features. Any architectural features, room configurations, basically we're talking about the floor and ceiling plans. You need to find out what the furniture is and where it's located, its layout, and take a note of the colors and finishes in the rooms. And a big tool for doing this, no surprise here, is to take sketches of a floor plan, an RCP, any important wall elevations, and maybe take note of some light distribution patterns, especially if you're investigating the daylighting issue. So here's some examples on your screen of a sketched floor plan and a sketched RCP. And this is something that you would do on your survey. You'd go into the site, you have your clipboard, you've got your pen, your paper, and you go ahead and take these measurements and take these observations and write down all this data on your field visit. So that was an overview of the lighting design process in general, and we covered project planning and programming.